Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo, and Mike, it looks like it's just a guys' night tonight.
Yeah, it seems to happen every couple of months, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a chance for us to kind of chill out, hang out, and discuss all things nerdery and geekery around said table.
Oh, well, see, I thought we could, like, live it up, loosen our belts, buy some beer, and talk about girls.
Yes, that too.
Okay, but yeah, it's just the two of us tonight. And we got a fun topic of discussion for this evening tonight. We are discussing video game remakes, the recent rash of, well, not really rash, I'd say pattern of video game remakes coming out, and some of the ones that are coming down the pipe, and kind of discuss some of the merits and pitfalls of remaking games. So, but of course, there is procedure to follow, so we're going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek. And our first question here, I'm going to open this one up to you, Mike. This one comes from Derek, and his question is, what do we think of the announcement of the David Tennant and Tom Baker crossover Big Finish Doctor Who story that was announced? I believe it was actually just today, wasn't it?
Was a couple of days ago. I mean, Big Finish does fantastic work with their audio productions. I'm pretty sure the writing should be on point for this. Just the fact that we can have these two doctors interact, because them on screen the last time was technically the 50th anniversary, though he wasn't in character as the fourth Doctor. It's neat. I do think it's cool, and I'm glad it's happening while Tom Baker's still with us, because he is getting on in years. So we're going to have a pretty cool adventure no matter what, and David Tennant is almost always fantastic in everything he's in. I don't think I've seen him in one bad thing, honestly.
Okay. As for me, I have a lot of Doctor Who stuff to catch on. I haven't even caught up on the TV series. The last one I watched was the last episode I remember seeing was a Capaldi episode, and it was the one where I think Davros was dying and Clara and Missy had to sneak into Skaro. So that shows you how behind I am. I heard David Tennant actually started doing Big Finish audios a couple years ago, though.
Yeah, it's not something I keep a total ear to, just because I don't have time for it, frankly. But I'm always pleased when past cast members can come back and do things. I mean, honestly, it would be my dream to get Christopher Eccleston back in there, but I doubt that'll happen. But yeah, I'm always happy to see more David Tennant stuff. I'm never, ever going to say no to that. And maybe this will be the first one that I check out, because it involves Daleks. So I'm in.
Okay. All right. And next question here is a two-parter. And this one comes from Harrison. And his first question is, what do I think of the upcoming Looney Tunes cartoons announced for HBO? He listened to our Bugs Bunny episode and wants my opinion as a fan of classic animation. Honestly, I don't really have any real thoughts. I have not enjoyed the Looney Tunes output for the last 20 years or so. I really only like the classic cartoons, so a lot of the modern specials and movies and stuff. I just, haven't really really enjoyed all that much. I remember enjoying Looney Tunes Back in Action a little bit. It wasn't the best thing I'd ever seen, but it had a few laughs. My favorite line from that movie being the line from Bugs Bunny, "If you don't find a rabbit and lipstick amusing, we've got nothing to say to each other," because that just sums up my sense of humor so well. But I mean, I didn't enjoy the Looney Tunes show, and I Wabbit was all right, didn't really tickle my funny bone. So I'm not really, I don't know, I don't really have any real thoughts either way about the upcoming Looney Tunes HBO cartoons.
Wasn't the Looney Tunes show, was that the one where Daffy and Bugs were roommates?
Yeah, it was kind of like an Odd Couple thing.
I kind of thought that show was all right. And the only reason I think of that show in any favorable light is I remember seeing this really late one night on YouTube. It's a really short vignette of Elmer Fudd making grilled cheese. And it struck out to me as so bizarre, but fit the mood. I think it was Kristen Shaw was Lola Bunny. And I just really thought that was really inspired, even though the Lola character she floats between being sexy and annoying, ever since her introduction in Space Jam. I don't know. I've seen some of the new animation stills from it. You know what? I'm willing to give it a shot, although getting it in Canada is going to be annoying. I think we get it via Crave in Canada. I know there is a stripped down version of HBO Max available, but I don't know. I might check it out. I'm not going to go out of my way to do so, though.
Yeah, see, I didn't care for the Looney Tunes show because, like I said, I'm a fan of the old Chuck Jones shorts, and that show is just about as far as you could get from those as you could possibly be. Like, you could have swapped out the Looney Tunes characters for literally any other characters, and it would have changed absolutely nothing about the show. Wabbit was a little closer step in the right direction, but the animation style didn't really hook me. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll give these new ones a shot, but I'm not really like super enthusiastic. And then he's got a second question here, and that's why don't I like television? And I mean, really, it just doesn't hold my interest anymore. It takes a lot for me to get hooked into a television show. I mean, it's like, you know, there's all these people telling me, oh, you know, Gonzo, you should watch Game of Thrones. You know, okay, no, not really all that interested. Breaking Bad, okay, you know, I don't really like shows following horrible people. The one that everybody keeps saying that I should watch because it's my type of humor, and I know that it is based on the memes and the clips that I've seen, is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but like I don't have that kind of time on my hands to sit through 15 fucking years of a television show anymore. So that's one that I'm just gonna have to pass by, but it's just like, I don't know, television just doesn't hold my interest anymore. I'm like, even stuff that, you know, in ordinary circumstances I'd be really stoked about, I'm just kind of like, you know, okay, it's a thing, and I probably won't see it. Like, I don't even have cable in my house. You know, if it's not on Netflix or Hulu, I don't watch it. And really, even then, unless we're watching it to do a review on it for the show, I probably won't watch it anyway. And even that's not a 100% guarantee, as my total disinterest in She-Ra has proven. So it's just, I don't know. It's just as I've gotten older, I've decided that there's some things I want to prioritize my free time with, and it's mostly gone towards video gaming. So, you know, it's like, if I can play a video game or sit and watch television, I'm gonna play a video game. So it's just, you know, television doesn't really hold my interest anymore. Really, the only shows nowadays that I follow with any regularity are Bob's Burgers, South Park, and the 2 weeks a year that it's actually new episodes are coming out, Rick and Morty. And then that's it. That's really the only television I watch.
I watch some TV, as I still have traditional cable, mostly for my wife Blair. She watches shows like Survivor, we watch Big Brother, we watch some other shows. Like, I watched The Goldbergs and the most recently canceled Schooled, which is a fucking tragedy that ABC would cancel that, because I think that was the stronger of the two Adam Goldberg shows. It takes a lot for me to get into television shows too, kind of like you, how you mentioned It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I've seen a few episodes and I enjoy it, but I just don't know whether I'd sit down and watch 15 years worth. The same with Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I've seen, again, parts of episodes. Really thought they were really, really, really funny. The last television show I remember getting into as it was airing, outside of Goldbergs and Schooled, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and I guess Game of Thrones to a limited extent, because I would get the Blu-rays when they come out, but I'd also get like screeners when they were available, or I'd see the show just a few hours after it would air. So yeah, if I didn't have to have cable, I might not, but I like having I like having instant variety. Plus, I use a lot of TV for news, but a lot of news websites are nearly instantaneous anyway, so.
Now, I mentioned I don't like television. Again, I want to clarify, that's mostly live-action television. I still watch a lot of cartoons. Like, I'm keeping up with the new DuckTales series, and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm catching up with that on Disney+. I'm also catching up on Star vs. the Forces of Evil, which I absolutely loved. And I kept up with My Little Pony until the day it ended. So, you know, and I'm, you know, I don't know. I'm interested to see where they go with the next series. The stills I've seen, it looks kind of interesting. So I don't know. I'm waiting to see what they do with that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as far as like, you know, regular television, it just doesn't hold my interest anymore. So I don't know. Maybe if they bring back Caprica, then that'll change my mind. That's a reference that, like, you know, people who've been listening since like episode 1 will understand. But anyway, and let's see here now. Let's see if we got one more quick one here before we launch into our discussion topic. Okay. All right. Oh, here's one for you, Mike. This is in the same vein of my game collecting questions I got from last week. This is from Tom, and he asked, "What is the most you have ever spent on a collectible replica, and what was it?"
Let me think about this one. I remember paying out a couple of $100 for some. I remember the Halo 5 Guardians I spent quite a bit on. Was one of my more expensive ones.
Is that the Legendary Edition?
Yeah, where you got the two kind of bookends or statues or whatever you want to call them. Trying to think what else. Skyrim was yet another one, which I even haven't put together a complete one of that one yet. Okay,
well, I think replicas.
Prop replicas? Oh, that's easy. Call of Duty, Black Ops 3, the Juggernog fridge, because that's a replica from the game, and that was near $400. And that's a working refrigerator. It's a replica from in Nazi Zombies. You can go up to the fridge and pop perks. And yeah, that was ridiculous and insane. I did sell it a couple of years ago, and not 6 months after I sold it, it stopped working.
Oh, so you kind of dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, I really did. So kind of thankful for that, because I was using it mostly to store my insulin in. So yeah, that's a good thing that wasn't kept around as a medical device. But I was really proud when I got it, because I thought it was so cool. And I remember I was one of very few people in Canada to get it, because I happened to be outside my EB Games when it went live. And because I follow a bunch of different websites and everything, I knew the store code to go to EB Games, say, hey, here's the code in your system. You may have to refresh a few times, but you're putting down the pre-order now. And I eventually did get it, and it was in my collection until mid last year.
Okay, not the answer I thought you were going to give.
What did you think it was going to be?
I thought you were gonna mention the lightsaber made out of the actual Graflex camera case.
That was given to me, so I don't consider that one. That one would be worth about $700 or $800 though.
Alrighty, well, that is all the Ask a Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdthethirdpower.com. We love getting your questions, love reading them on the air, so go ahead and send in your questions, and you just might get yours read and answered on the show. And with that, we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes of this discussion. And there has been a pattern, a spat, as if you will, a clutch. Yes, I have a thought. There's been a lot of remakes. I'm going to stop trying to be clever with that. There's been a lot of game remakes in the last couple of years, and there's still more down the pipe. So we thought it would be fun to kind of look at some of these remakes and kind of discuss sort of the merits and pratfalls of remaking these games, and whether it maybe heralds a kind of a sign of things to come for the game industry. So just to be totally clear, we're talking about total from the ground up remakes, not just updated re-releases with some extra content like Persona 5 Royal, although that is phenomenal. You should play it if you haven't. I'm talking about stuff like the Resident Evil remakes, Link's Awakening that we got last year, the upcoming Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and even some older stuff like Tomb Raider Anniversary or Conquer Live and Reloaded, and some of these remakes that have come out in the last several years. So, Mike, you mentioned off mic before we started this that your most recent experience with this phenomenon is the Resident Evil series. So, what do you think of these remakes so far, based on what your experience with them?
I'm surprised they took so bloody long, because when you look at the last Resident Evil remake prior to the two most recent, Resident Evil remake came out in 2002 from the original back in 1996 on the original PlayStation, with the Shinji Mikami wanting to do it. He's like, I want to do something for the GameCube that'll live up to my original vision. So when he eventually created Remake, he's like, okay, this is what I more or less had in mind. It's cool. It's great. And there was always talk for years, will he do Resident Evil 2 and 3? And from what I read on Wikipedia and another interview, he said he didn't want to take away from directing Resident Evil 4, which was in development at that time, to focus on these remakes. And it was always talked about for years. And I don't think it was until 2015 that it was officially announced, but we didn't see a trailer until 2018. And then we got it in January of 2019. And honestly, Resident Evil 2 was my game of the year back in 2019. It did everything right from the original. It updated what it needed to. It took everything that made that game scary and atmospheric and cranked it up to 11 and still made it feel like Resident Evil. The game still takes place in 1998. The original events of the story still make sense. They still talk about the T-Virus, the Umbrella Corporation. They still reference events that happened in Resident Evil, the first game, not so much in Resident Evil 0, but all the story plot points are there, plus a few new ones. Like they have Ada Wong is now playable, and she has like computer hacks. Well, she was playable in the original, but here she has like computer hacking sections. In the other one, you also play as Sherry, which in the original game she just ran away from shit. Here she can do more stealth things. There's a really cool section where she has to hide from the police chief in this abandoned orphanage, and I think you throw acid in his face or something.
You and I are gonna have to agree to disagree about that section. I actually hated that section. I thought it was clever. I came here to play Resident Evil, not Metal Gear Toddler starring Sherry Snake.
I thought it was different. And I was happy that the series did that. Now, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was one step forward, 2 steps back. It's still made in the same engine, looks great, still follows pretty much almost every action beat from Resident Evil 3 Nemesis back in 1999, except it cuts the clock tower, cuts out the parks. It cuts out a few scenes. It expands on the hospital hugely for some reason. And the Nemesis warps in shape really, really, really fast. But it's primarily an action game. Plus, you play as Carlos for a lot longer. And your decision-making changes they're no longer there. Like in the original, you'd be like, shine the light in Nemesis's eyes, use the cord against him, or push him off the bridge, and you could get multiple endings. Here, no, there's just one and done. That's it. You and Carlos escape Raccoon City. There's no Barry Burton Easter egg or anything like that. You don't even get to kill Brad. You don't even see Nemesis kill Brad, which is something that was always iconic to the Nemesis intro to that game, was seeing him plunge his tentacle through the back of Brad's head. But it was fun. Not a lot to do with it. They did add a multiplayer mode, Resident Evil Resistance. It was so interesting to me. I deleted it immediately to save hard drive space because I just don't care. I'm never going to play it. But I thought it was cool. I'm glad it happened now that the technology, the engine has evolved, the controls have evolved, game making, philosophy has changed, because if this had come out in like 2008, it would be like Resident Evil 4, which is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It's still very, very playable today, but it would be a different game now. So I'm glad we had to wait this long to see it. There is talk of Resident Evil 4 being remade. There's talk of Resident Evil Code Veronica being remade. I'd like to see Code Veronica before Resident Evil 4, just to complete the original kind of storyline of the Umbrella Corporation, because you can still use 5 and 6 if you want to continue that continuity, which is a little bit goofy, but whatever. I'm glad it happened. I think they're exciting games. I think they're both worth playing. Resident Evil 2 is most definitely worth owning, and it's on sale like every other week, I swear. And Resident Evil 3, if you can pick it up on sale, it's totally worth it, but it's not worth paying full price for right now.
See, my big fear with Resident Evil 3, and it was pretty much confirmed, was first I was announced like less than a year after Resident Evil 2 had come out. And my biggest fear was how they were going to handle the Nemesis, because it felt like they'd really kind of shot their load with that with Mr. X in the Resident Evil 2 remake, where instead of having him attacking you in just these scripted sequences, he's actively hunting you throughout the police station. And if you remember in the original Resident Evil 3, you were in this big open, well, not really open, but, multi-pathed Raccoon City where you had multiple avenues of egress to get from A to B, and you kind of had to backtrack several times over the map to get what needed doing. And Nemesis is active. I thought that with a similar layout like that, with Nemesis actively hunting you throughout the city, Alien Isolation style, I thought that would have been a much better execution of the character than what we got in Resident Evil 3, where aside from maybe one or two fights right at the start, he's just a bunch of scripted boss fights. And I was actually really disappointed. I feel like Resident Evil 3 to me felt like an expansion to Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, and that's what it should have been.
Yeah,
a $30 expansion.
Yeah, and it felt like I felt like with Resident Evil 2, they took great care to update stuff from the original and make it work with modern gameplay sensibilities. I'm still a little irritated about how they handled the B scenarios, but I mean that's a rant for another table. Whereas with Resident Evil 3, it just felt kind of slapdash. Now another major remake that came out recently is, of course, the one that everyone else has been clamoring for, and that's the Final Fantasy VII remake. And that's one where it's a complete and total revamp. Like the Resident Evil remakes, okay, you're still kind of in that survival horror genre, whereas with the Final Fantasy VII remake, it's a completely different game. And they have made a lot of changes, still keeping basically the story, but still with a lot of changes and new differences. So I guess the question now that I want to ask, especially when compared to other remakes that have just been straight one and shot for shot remakes like Link's Awakening or Conquer Live and Reloaded back on the Xbox, do you think it's which do you think is kind of the better approach to remaking game, to kind of staying as faithful as you can to the original or trying something new? Because at least, especially in the case of Resident Evil 2 and Link's Awakening, we saw these two diametrically opposed philosophies, and both of them found a lot of success.
I think doing something original with elements of the original is the way to go. If I had to pick between a Resident Evil 2 and a Link's Awakening, I'm more inclined to go Resident Evil 2 because it's still what you love, but it's slightly different. It's a variation, whereas Link's Awakening, I've only seen trailers, gameplay previews, etc. I haven't bought it yet. I like that it's a completely remade from the ground up, and it's a more welcoming experience than it was like 25 years ago. But I don't know. I can maybe tie in an example that's maybe a little bit more contemporary for me. What would you think of something like, say, Metroid Metroid 2 Samus Returns on the original Game Boy to Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS?
Oh, see, now I have thoughts, because to me, the one true remake of Metroid 2 is another Metroid 2 remake that was released on the internet and then subsequently squashed. I managed to snatch a download of that before Nintendo put the DMCA out, and if you know where to look, you can still find it. And that actually kind of split the difference as far as staying close to hewing to the original and doing something new. I have played Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS, and full disclosure, I liked it, but it was definitely a much lesser Metroid experience to me compared to AM2R, because of some mechanical changes that I didn't agree with. So one of the gimmicks that they introduced in Samus Returns is a sort of a melee counter. When an enemy lunges at you, you kind of smack them, and then they wind up freezing, and you can take some free shots. And it felt like it reduced the game to a case of a series of quick time events. You basically just stand there waiting for the enemy to lunge, do the melee, and then blast them. And I felt it really slowed the pacing down. And then there were also some story changes made that I absolutely did not agree with. So in Metroid 2, the original Game Boy, after you beat the Metroid Queen, you find the hatchling, and you make this climb out of the planet's core back to your ship while the hatchling follows you. And it's just this kind of serene moment. There's this calming music that also has kind of hint of triumph, and you're kind of reflecting on the fact that you're not going to commit genocide against this species. You're going to save this hatchling, and it's just this nice little calming denouement. Whereas in Samus Returns, the background music is this hyped up heavy metal mix, and you wind up having to fight Ridley right at the end, which I just thought was dumb as hell. Not the least of which being because this hatchling does absolutely nothing for its own self-preservation, but that's a story for another day. Now, AM2R stuck very close to the original. It had basically kind of the same map layout in a lot of ways, but it also introduced some new areas and tweaked some older ones, and actually took some time to add to make the areas distinct and to add context. So in the original Metroid 2, each of the ruins you came in were just that. They were just decrepit temples. Whereas in AM2R, the first one, it's still a decrepit temple, but the second one is a water processing plant. The third one's a power plant. The fourth one is, a weapons factory. And it adds context to these areas that you're in and shows that there was actually a civilization on this planet. And it kind of split, like I said, it kind of split the difference between staying true to Metroid 2 on the Game Boy and going almost completely original like Samus Returns did. So, I don't know. Because having played a bunch of these remakes and seeing them go like the Link's Awakening route, where it's a shot-for-shot remake, and seeing them do something new like Resident Evil 2, I can kind of see merit in both of them. And that's why it's sort of an interesting thing to examine, because, geeks are a nostalgic species. We love to see we're all, and that makes us very contradictory. We want to see the old stuff brought forward into the modern age, but we also want to see something done new. But at the same time, the old stuff is also kind of sacrosanct. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah.
I mean, one remake that I really liked because it made it more accessible and more fun for me because it became more casual was essentially Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow got remade in the Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu.
And that's actually the second time that's happened.
Yeah, I just had a lot more fun with Pokemon Let's Go Eevee than I did with the originals because I wasn't grinding for stats. It wasn't the same battles over and over and over again. I was going out catching Pokemon, trying to fill out my Pokedex. Also, I had the interaction with Pokemon Go, so I could import all the Pokemon I caught into the wild into my game, which I thought was tremendously awesome. And I put like a lot of hours, well over 30 or 40, maybe more, into that game. And I played that when it came out during the holiday period. I even got the special edition controller with it. That's the Pokeball, and I thought that was neat. And the few times I got out in my wheelchair, I had that attached to my wheelchair, so I could catch Pokemon on the go, and I could take Eevee for a walk. So that was cool. I thought that was remarkably well done. One game that I think did the remake route done right, and I know it's controversial, was Metal Gear Solid. And when it got remade on the GameCube as Metal Gear Solid 2, the Twin Snakes, that solidified me as a Metal Gear fan because I'd played Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty as my first Metal Gear game. I played the original, but I didn't beat it. So I played Metal Gear Solid 2 and beat that, loved it. Tried to go back and play Metal Gear Solid 1, didn't get very far. Then the Twin Snakes came out, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then it got me in the Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, and I just became a fan of that franchise ever since. And I think having that game remade more or less in the Metal Gear Solid 2 engine and having the cutscenes directed by a Japanese filmmaker, I think added a lot to it. I mean, yeah, it changed the gameplay on a fundamental level, but it felt a lot more accessible. It felt like Metal Gear was being brought into the modern age. And I'm really sad this has never gotten an official re-release or been ported. Because honestly, if Konami wanted to make some money, okay, cool, here's Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, and 4. And fuck, let's throw in the Phantom Pain and Peace Walker. Here's the collection, $100, any console you want. Merry fucking Christmas. Here's the money, Konami. and I wouldn't feel bad about it at all.
Yeah, Twin Snakes was actually my first Metal Gear game too. Now that I think about it, and yeah, that's another case where it hews very close to the original. I mean, it's literally a shot for shot remake of the first one. Like you said, they added the gameplay tweaks from Metal Gear Solid 2, like the first person aiming and the tranquilizer gun, because I remember that wasn't in the first game. And yeah, it was another case where it sort of made the game more accessible, especially to people who hadn't had a PlayStation, hadn't been exposed to the series. So like I said, that was the first Metal Gear that I played, because I didn't have a PlayStation until I started getting into game collecting real serious. So that was what got me into the series. Then when I got my PS2, I got Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 and absolutely fell in love with the series. And actually, speaking of Metal Gear, we also have a case of a Metal Gear being remade and having it be absolute crap. And I refer to the version of Snake Eater on the 3DS, which was absolutely terrible and almost completely unplayable.
The fact that it ran on the 3DS, I think, was quite a technical achievement. But yeah, it was crap. Like, there's no two ways around. Like, controlling it was annoying. I mean, it might be a little easier now with the new 3DS. I don't know, because I sold my copy long ago. But yeah, just what the fuck? Certain games just shouldn't be ported. Like, I'd rather see them develop and put that money into ports for modern consoles, because unless you've owned, like, actually, no. The Metal Gear Solid Collection is backwards compatible on Xbox One, but you can't play it on PS4. It's not available for the Switch. These games would play well on those platforms. Like Twin Snakes, that's going to run fine. Metal Gear Solid 2 Subsistence is going to play fine. Or was that what the special edition was called? Either way. And then
Substance was 2, Subsistence was 3.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, you could do it and bring it over, and it wouldn't be that big a deal. Even if you have to charge them a la carte, because Konami, why not? People are going to pay for it. I guarantee you they would sell enough numbers to justify them porting it over. I mean, they could even bring over Metal Gear Solid 4, which is a PlayStation exclusive, which is locked to that hardware. And Metal Gear Solid 4 is a fantastic fucking game. But unless you owned a PlayStation 3, you ain't played the son of a bitch. It's one of the few PlayStation 3 games I've actually kept, because I don't know whether I'm ever going to see it again.
Well, I mean, that's getting into the case of ports instead of straight remakes, which is a topic for another day. But I mean, yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, it's something. And so now this kind of brings us to sort of the question that I want to ask about why we're getting so many of these remakes in rapid succession. I mean, just off the top of my head, we've gotten between this year and last year, we've gotten, I think, like 7. So we got the 2 Resident Evils, we got Final Fantasy, we got Link's Awakening, we got Xenoblade Chronicles coming out. I haven't heard fuck all about the development, but I know that there's a remake of the original System Shock coming out, which that scares the fucking hell out of me, because anyone who's listened to the show for a long time knows System Shock is one of my favorite games ever. So I'm scared to death that they're not gonna treat my baby right.
See, I'm honestly surprised they've never remade certain franchises that have such a huge fan base. I know you talked about it before. Why has there not been an Earthbound remake and bring it up to like 3D or bring it up to Nintendo Switch modern standards? I guarantee you that would sell 1 million units. You would think so, but Nintendo's actually run the numbers on the people demanding Mother 3 and found that though the fan base is loud, they found that it's not sizable enough to justify the localization, which I think is kind of bull with the modern digital distribution age. But I mean, that's going into business decisions that are just beyond my knowledge base. But I mean, yeah, that also brings us something like, you know, these are franchises. There are franchises out there that have basically been left in the dust. That because, you know, they didn't really work, I guess in the when we hit the polygon ceiling in the 90s or in the 2000s, you know, they weren't really able to evolve. But now that we have this modern technology and modern game design sensibilities, we could very easily bring some of these franchises back. Like, I would love to see a modern day Myst game. I want a modern day Chrono Trigger. Or Final Fantasy 3/6. Or, because Hideo Kojima can pretty much do what he wants now, let's have him remake Snatcher. That'd be fucking cool.
That would be fucking cool.
Or if you can't do that, have it re-released via limited run games. There's no reason why certain franchises cannot be rebooted and remade because they're just sitting there. The IP can't be worth that much. I know it's on the TurboGrafx 16 Mini, but who gives a shit? Well, it can't be worth that much.
Well, we're getting kind of sidetracked to the question I was going to ask, and that's: do you think that the reason why we're getting so many remakes is because it might be because the game industry might be entering into sort of a phase that Hollywood's been in for a while, where they're kind of running out of ideas for new stuff, so they're just kind of rehashing the old wells?
I think they see what's financially successful. They know what's basically, it's like a band going out on tour and playing their greatest hits. Yeah, sure, they're here to promote their new album, but they're going to play a lot of crowd pleasers to get people warmed up, to get people happy. And that's what a lot of game studio development feels like right now. We're going through the greatest hits catalog, and for the most part, that's okay. I do like seeing new things, but people are afraid of new things. And that's just the way people are. People are very gun shy, and people like us, I think, are making up more and more buying power of what's commercially available. So people that maybe are, I'm going to say younger, and I'm not basing this anything off of anything but speculation, are maybe less inclined to try new things. So like I said, it's gonna be people kind of looking at things saying, hey, that looks neat. It's a game that played 20 years ago. My brother loved it. My sister loved it. Whereas they're not going to try anything new and scary because they don't know. Like, there were so many games that came out last year that I think should have sold better than what they initially did, but you don't hear people talking about them today. Like, I remember when Astral Chain came out. That game looked fucking cool, but nobody talks about it now.
Yeah, speak for yourself, Kemosabe. I sang that game's praises for months.
Yeah, but nobody talks about it now in like the average circle.
So, another thing that I kind of raise my eyebrow at and kind of worries me with this trend of remakes is that people will forget the originals. Like, going back again to Resident Evil. The thing that worries me is that, people will see that, we've got the PS4 version and be like, well, why should I go back and play the PlayStation original? And it's like, no, the original version is so worth playing. I would even say more so than the remake. You'd have such a much more fulfilling, intense experience with it. So I guess one of my fears with this spate of remakes is that, the older versions are going to be kind of left behind and forgotten and never really, talked about or remembered anymore. So do you see something like that happening possibly?
Not every game ages well, and I'm the biggest Resident Evil mark you'll ever meet. The original Resident Evil 1 is rough. Resident Evil 2 is a little less rough, and it gets a little bit better as you go through the years. So if a new Resident Evil fan is coming into the franchise new now, playing these right now is fine. If they want to revisit these games later, sure, but know what you're getting into. So I think using a new game to get people into an old franchise is a wonderful idea, as long as they know where it comes from. Is it necessary for them to play it? No. For example, I want a new Silent Hill game, but fuck if you think I'm going back to the PlayStation 1 version with that awful draw distance and everything else. It's not scary by today's standards. And maybe that's me as someone whose gaming sensibilities and evolved isn't the right word, but changed over the years. Like, I used to love a lot of PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era stuff, but it just doesn't hold up anymore.
You and I are going to have to agree to disagree on that, because the original Silent Hill still scares the shit out of me to this day because of that limited draw distance.
But that's the thing, though. We're of that age where that's what we remember. That's nostalgia speaking too. If you ask the average, let's say 15-year-old person to pop in a PlayStation 1 game and like, here, play Silent Hill for 2 hours, they're going to say, what the fuck is this crap? But you ask them to play Resident Evil 2, where there's zombies jumping out after you've pumped them full of bullets, and you pop them with headshots and they're still coming after you, that's going to get them because it's more visceral. It gets them in the environment. Like a game's visuals are important, but they're not the be all end all. What was built then in terms of atmosphere was built upon our experiences with the Atari, the NES, the Super Nintendo. The PlayStation was mind blowing. Now having a new viewpoint, a new entry point at PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, their expectations are now higher as well, because now look at all the movies we have. I mean, some of the movies from the 80s that rely on practical effects look fantastic, but some of the movies in the 90s that relied on digital effects look like shit. I mean, one of the rare examples where the digital doesn't look like crap and practical is used as well is Jurassic Park. But newer movies, it's kind of an odd hit or miss thing. And I think it depends on where the gamer comes from. Like I said, you are one of the few old school collectors that I know that can put themselves back in this. And I guess maybe I've just played too many modern games now that I've lost that sense of wonder and sensibility. But I don't know, man. I guess the phrase applies to me. You can never go home again. And I can't.
I don't know. Might be an interesting experiment. Find ourselves a younger gamer who's never played a Silent Hill game before, and have them play the original and see what they think of it. So, I don't know. Might have to see. Can't con my little brother into that one. I have an evil idea now. But I mean, it's an interesting phenomenon to examine, because I mean, up until the last couple of years, I mean, video game remakes were extraordinarily rare. Like, before the last couple of years, I could only name maybe 3 times off the top of my head that a game got a full off the frame remake, and that's Tomb Raider Anniversary, Conquer Live and Reloaded, and Resident Evil on the GameCube. So, which, by the way, 20 years later, that game still holds up really fucking well. It really does. I just finished up the Switch version. That game holds up. That game has aged phenomenally. So, but it's like, you know, but like I look at some of the announcements made, like you mentioned, they've announced that they're remaking Resident Evil Code Veronica and Resident Evil 4. Okay, what could possibly change about Resident Evil 4 aside from maybe adding control on a second analog stick? Because I mean, that game still holds up really well, except for the single stick controls. Holy shit!
I would streamline the storyline if I were to do anything, because that's kind of what they did with Resident Evil 3 Remake, is they streamlined things, and not for the better, in my opinion. But if they want to have a Code Veronica remake, if they want to have it fit more in line with the series continuity as it stands now, things are going to have to change, because Code Veronica is so peak 2000s, not like 2000s, like Steve Burnside is fucking annoying. Look at these cool guns I got, Claire. It's terrible. It's playable, but it's terrible. Plus, I wonder if the villains would be reworked considering modern sensibilities. So
I would hope not, because that's what made those villains so fucking creepy.
Yeah, but I just don't know whether having your villain is a cross-playing something. I don't know. It's weird. I think they'd have to change it up a little bit. But it could work. I'd be very curious. Resident Evil 4 doesn't really need a whole lot adjusted to it, other than maybe bringing in some modern gameplay design philosophies. The storyline can remain remarkably intact.
I don't know. I mean, you talk about bringing in modern gameplay sensibilities. Resident Evil 4 made modern gameplay sensibilities.
It really did.
I mean, so, like, again, that brings us back to, what could you possibly do to update it aside from adding adding camera controls on the second analog stick? It just strikes me as pointless.
It's going to have to boil down to what can you bring new to the story, because Resident Evil Remake, for example, back in 2002, streamlined and updated the original Resident Evil from 1996. It added the whole subplot with Lisa Trevor. It expanded upon a lot of the T-virus details that like people were kind of speculating about and were even expanded upon in some novels. at the time, which are not canon, but which are ridiculously entertaining reads. Like, there is stuff that could be done if they wanted to, and I would trust a good game director. I mean, I would obviously have Shinji Mikami consult, but I'd maybe have someone with a fresh vision who can respect the original. I mean, still have it take place on Rockford Island, still go back to the Antarctic, still have Chris fight Wesker in a Harrier jet, because why not? I'd be okay with that. And just see what could be done. But it's mostly going to be storyline and maybe adding in some new gameplay elements. But I don't think you're wrong either in terms of what can you really do.
Yeah. So now, I mean, I will say that as far as the Resident Evil series goes, that the series is still moving forward and is experimenting. Like, we just had Resident Evil 7, which I've heard is phenomenal. Haven't played it yet myself because I'm fucking wuss. And then we've also got Resident Evil 8, which is apparently doing a completely new thing on its own. So I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. But I don't know. It seems kind of odd to me that we're getting all these remakes in such rapid succession. And even Nintendo is starting to get on it. There's rumor going down the pipe that we're going to get a remade Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo Switch. And I'm just like, I mean, again, that's a game that made modern game sensibilities. What could you possibly do aside from giving a visual facelift to remake it?
It's going to feel like Super Mario Odyssey, and that's not a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, if they told me tomorrow it's up for pre-order, sure. I'm more interested in a remake of Metroid Prime, although there's the rumor of the Switch collection coming out next month. I'll believe it when I see it for fucking pre-order.
God, I hope that's true, like, so badly.
Yeah, same here, because I've only ever played the first one. I've always wanted to finish out the series. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I have a feeling because of COVID threw a lot of wrenches into a lot of people's plans this year. We'll see more things announced, like how they just dropped the new Paper Mario on us in the middle of nowhere. I imagine we'll see a Mario 64 announcement, if it's true, this summer. And
that's another thing. As we kind of run a little short here, is, do you think maybe with the whole COVID-19 and everybody shutting down, do you think maybe we might see more remakes for the short term coming out because they're relatively easy to produce?
I think so, personally.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, remaking certain games, I mean, you already have most of the heavy design lifting is done. Now it's what can you do to make it better? I mean, one really good remake, which we haven't talked about, was Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. They remade that from the ground up, and it works fucking fantastic. Shadow of the Colossus. Still the same game you played back in the PlayStation 2 era, but now it's brought up the PlayStation 4 standards. Most of the heavy lifting is done. And my wife's phone is going off. So she apologizes for that, and that's the nature of live to tape radio. Anyway, continuing on. That's my thought.
Oh, that's it? You're done?
Yeah, I'm done. That totally threw me off.
Okay. It remains to be seen. I mean, certainly there are games that I would love to see remade with modern sensibilities. Like I said, I'm waiting for news about the System Shock remake because I want that to be good so badly. So, but at the same time, I'm also kind of, a little. I feel a sense of trepidation about it because I kind of see. I'm afraid of seeing it happening with games that I see happen so often with movies, which is, why should I go back and watch the original when there's this new version here that is so much better just on the basis of its visuals alone. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old man yelling at a cloud on that one. So, but we'll see. So, but anyway, I'm sorry, you're about to say something?
Yeah, I'm all for modern remakes if it brings new people into the franchise as fans, because it's never a bad thing to bring more fandom in the sub, especially if it gets people excited, it gets people playing. It's wonderful. So hopefully we will see more fantastic remakes, not lazy cash-in remakes. And it's a good time to be a gamer, whether you're new, old, or looking for something that old is now new again. So Resident Evil 2 or Link's Awakening are two prime examples. Or if you're old like me, you want Pokemon Let's Go Eevee or Pikachu. So there's something for everybody.
All right, and that is all the time that we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you next week for Fools Who Ride, and in 2 weeks for whatever we're discussing. I don't have the schedule in front of me. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you as always for tuning in. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm Mike the Birdman Dodd.
We'll see you next time. Taka, play us out.